The events of yesterday involving Charlie Kirk and his murder, his assassination. I don't care if YouTube demonetizes this because I don't get paid for these anyway, need to be discussed. So I've changed what veteran perspectives will be about this week. It won't be about our blog, it will be about Charlie Kirk. Let's talk about it. Look, I get it. People didn't like Charlie Kirk. He was on one side of the aisle. People are on the other side of the aisle. That's how this country works. Kirk, many things. He's bold, provocative, controversial. But he used his voice to argue for ideas that he believed in. Whether you believed in them or not is irrelevant. Whether I believed in them or not is irrelevant. He believed in them. He wasn't breaking any laws. He would go to these college campuses to engage young people in political debate, even teaching young people how to have amicable political debate. Something we are severely lacking in the United States of America. And he was killed for it. Think about that. He was killed in the United States because of what he believed politically. That's where we're at now. We used to be the beacon on the hill, the house on the hill, the light of the world. We're still the ones that other people call, that other countries call when they need help, while those same countries and their citizens constantly belittle us. But yet, when they need us for treasure and warfare, we're the first ones on their speed dial. I'm talking to you, Europe. But now we're no better than anyone else. That event yesterday ensured that the United States of America is no longer special. Rome is falling. That event is a marker in history, not because of who was killed, but because of why they were killed. Think about that for a second. Let that marinate in your brains for a second. That could have been any one of us. Could have been me. I talk about politics openly all the time. I worked in a profession for over a decade that historically is on the opposite end of what I believe politically. Mostly. I have friends that are very expressive politically, both left, right, and center. It could have been them. They could have been hosting an event. And what's the first thing I see on social media? People on the extreme left. This isn't the normal left. The far left making fun of it, laughing at it. He's a husband, a father. He's an American. And he was murdered because of what he believed. And I know what some of you are going to say in the comments, my trolls, who I love. Well, why should his death matter more than anyone else's? It doesn't. It doesn't. His value as a human being is no more and no less than anyone else's. You're using that point to try to garner a reaction because you can't think of any other argument. His death is highlighted because he was a public figure. It's just like when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. President Kennedy was assassinated. All the way back to Lincoln's assassination. Right? I'm not comparing him to those people, but those deaths were highlighted during their times because of who they were. Because they're public figures. Controversial public figures, too, right? That's where they have a commonality. Charlie Kirk was engaging in our oldest tradition. Some say why we formed our country to begin with. The right to express ourselves. The right to engage ourselves. To engage with other people. Charlie Kirk once said, if you believe in something, you need to have the courage to fight for those ideas, not run away from them or try and silence them. Look, I'm not a Charlie Kirk disciple. I know who he was. I know the organization that he worked for. I know and understand his beliefs, good and bad. There's some of what he talked about that I definitely agree with. There's some I'm just like, I don't know if I'm on board with that. Right? Or maybe it's how he expressed it that I just didn't quite get. But he had the courage to publicly engage. The man was only 31 years old. And some of you sick fucks are celebrating his death. That could have been your father, your brother, your uncle, your friend. He went to college campuses for a reason. College campuses are not intended to be an echo chamber of the same ideas, which is what they've become. His idea, and Turning Point USA's idea, his organization, was to go to campuses and express and expose students to different ideas and have debate about them. That's what college is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a safe space for your ideas, to hide within your ideas. That's not learning. That's hiding. That's cowardice. Charlie Kirk also said, many textbooks fail to present students with both sides of an issue. Students are being pushed towards an education that demonizes free enterprises while advocating top-down government, deficit spending, and class warfare. That's why he went to college campuses. To try to express both sides. Again, you don't have to agree with it. Those were his reasons. He didn't call for violence. In fact, he condemned violence at every turn. He called for argument, persuasion, and debate. The core tenets of what it means to engage in politics in this country. Or what it's supposed to mean. Today is September 11th. 24 years ago, the worst day in American history. And there's a section of the world that celebrates today. Think about that. Over 2,000 people died 24 years ago today and didn't have the opportunity to express themselves, to live the rest of their lives because of an act of terror. Yesterday was an act of terror. Think about that. Yesterday is a straight up act of terror. It is domestic terrorism. Charlie Kirk challenged norms with his ideas. He pushed conservative ideas in spaces dominated by the left. College campuses. He didn't want college campuses to be echo chambers because they're not supposed to be. He was hated by a variety of different people. People celebrated his death. They mocked his death. They justified it, or they shrugged it off as something that was deserved. Oh, he had it coming. Really? Does that mean I have it coming too? Because I express myself, politically? Because I express my ideas? Because I do so all the time, and I do so unashamed. Think about that the next time you make a political post on Facebook or Twitter, X, or make your little TikTok video expressing yourself. You could be next, right? But hey, that's okay, right? To all of you celebrating, that's okay, right? That response is the sickest thing I have ever seen on social media. And I love social media. I enjoy it, right? Like some people say I'm an old head. The kids call me an unk, but I'm still plugged in. I'm still engaged in social media in a very heavy way. The one quote that a lot of people have jumped to throw out there in regards to Charlie Kirk was his quote about the Second Amendment. That we need to accept some gun deaths to protect the Second Amendment. A lot of people on the left found that quote real fucking quick, like they had it in their goddamn back pocket. And we're like, oh, I guess he protected the Second Amendment today. And the quote is, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect other God-given rights. He wasn't talking about the need or the want for people to die to gun violence to protect our Second Amendment rights at all. And for those of you wondering, I'm a pro 2A guy. Shoot me for it. Because that's what you all want. Because you can't have the first without the second. Think about that quote for a second. The Second Amendment protects all the other rights that we have. And if you think it does it, you're dead wrong. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact. People want to bring up school shootings. There was another one yesterday. They're terrible. They're tragic. The first thing people want to do is ban guns. They don't want to spend money on mental health. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, we could do two things at once. Can we? Because we seem to be pretty bad at that. The first thing y'all want to do is jump on that bandwagon. Oh, we got to get rid of all guns. Some states with the harshest gun laws in this country have the highest gun violence. Taking guns away isn't going to stop gun crime. In fact, it's going to make it worse. But I digress. It's okay to have disagreed with Charlie Kirk politically, personally, morally. That's your right. That's your political stance against his political stance. You shouldn't be shot for it. The same way he shouldn't have been shot for it. Again, Charlie Kirk heavily criticized. But he knew that. When you're in that very public space, criticism is part of the game. When you're on one side heavily, criticism's part of the game. He understood that. But some of you want to cherry pick partial quotes to justify why a man was assassinated yesterday? Crazy. Y'all are crazy. And then on top of that, some people just show complete indifference. And maybe they don't know how to react, and that's a fair assessment, right? Like, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know what that was about. I'm going to stay out of that conversation. That's fair. But some people were literally posted videos that would start with something like, I was going to talk about Charlie Kirk's death today, but instead I'm going to make cookies. What? That's ignorant. That's ignorant. Absolutely ignorant. There's a core question here that we have to consider that I will give my answer to, and I encourage you to give your answer down in the comments. Do we defend free speech even when we hate the speaker? And it's a similar question I used to pose to my students when I was teaching history and government. Do we defend free speech even when we hate the speaker? My answer is yes. Because if one person's free speech is taken away, then anyone else's can be taken away, including my own, including yours. And if we allow the free speech of anyone to be denigrated in any way by the government, by the citizenry, then we've lost ourselves as a country. Period. Some people might disagree with me. Some people are like, oh, he engaged in hate speech. He didn't, but go off, I guess. And I'm going to make a statement here that some people are going to come after me in the comments. I think hate speech should be protected too. Because what you think is hate speech, someone else might think is their truth. And if you think what Charlie Kirk was doing was hate speech and you want that banned, nope. Sorry, Charlie. That ain't going to happen. Because that's political discourse, not hate. You need to learn the difference. Hell, in the United States of America, we still have fucking Nazis running around. They're free to do so. Until they break a law, they're free to be their little Nazi selves. We have gangs that we know exist, that people are a part of, that the police, hell, the FBI knows people are a part of those gangs that do bad shit. They can't arrest them for being in those gangs. They can only arrest them once they commit a crime. Think about that. There's a whole section of history in the 1950s, because most of you fucking forgot how to read a history book, called the Red Scare, where this government, our government, went after communists in the United States so vehemently hard that we said, yo, this is probably a bad idea. We're actually encroaching on the freedom of people who are communists, but also American citizens. It took a second because we feared the Soviets at the time. But some level-headed people said, whoa, hold on. We might be taking this a bit too far. And I think we're back at a marker where we might be taking it a bit too far. As a citizenry. Now, I don't know who the shooter was, the assassin was. I haven't gathered information on that yet, so I can't talk about that without research. I won't do that. But to me, it doesn't matter who they are. That shot was taken with intent. It was taken at a target that they chose. And a man is dead because of what he believed in. Those historical parallels that I mentioned earlier, Lincoln murdered for saving the Union, literally murdered for saving the Union. Martin Luther King murdered for demanding civil rights through nonviolence. Like RFK, the old one, not the current one, murdered mid-campaign for advocating for political change. In every case, they tried to kill the man to kill the idea. Think about that. They tried to kill the man to kill the idea. I would argue that Charlie Kirk's assassination fits this criteria. Not as renowned and popular as those guys, right? But we're trying to kill the idea. If I get rid of Kirk, I get rid of the idea. Again, we don't know the information about the shooter. Some people have said, oh, it's someone on the left. That would make the most sense. I tend to lean towards that argument, but we don't know what we don't know. I do know that the people making fun of the death were on the left. The far left, the extreme left, not the standard left. That's not how that works. I also find it cute when those people call the right fascists when they're the ones engaging in fascist activity. When you're calling to take away the guns of others, yet your ilk uses a gun to silence the political speech of those that you disagree with, guess what you are? You're a fascist. Stop using words that you don't know the definition of. Stop it now. Free speech protects the unpopular, not the safe. Think about that for a second. I'm going to say that one more time. That's a quote from me, from your boy. Free speech protects the unpopular, not the safe. The unpopular speech started this country. Where we said, hey, King George, you're kind of being a dick. Here's 27 reasons why on this Declaration of Independence. It protects what is unpopular. It protects what you might disagree with, what I might disagree with. And it should. If we allow shit like this to become normalized, then there is no more free speech. Everyone has to be the same, because if you step out of line, you're going to die. There's an old famous quote adage, well-behaved women rarely make history, for my for my women out there. Guess you can't be I guess you can't step out of line anymore because you might get shot. No more feminism. You get rid of that shit because you might get shot. Title IX sports, advocating for women's sports. I have daughters. I want them to compete against other women. Yeah, I said it out loud. Shoot me for it. Right? Because that's okay now, right? That's okay now. That's what those of you making fun of this are doing. You're making this normalized. And you're scum for doing it. Absolute scum. It's the grossest thing I've ever seen on the internet. Again, the test. Will we defend speech we despise? You don't have to defend the idea, right? You could still disagree with the idea and present your arguments about why you think the idea is wrong, using speech to combat speech. Using speech to combat speech. That's called debate. Or it used to be. What yesterday was bringing a gun to a fist fight. Think about that. Two people squaring up to fight. All right, cool. They're going to fight. But instead, one guy's buddy went and grabbed a gun. That's what happens. That's why this conversation matters. We cannot normalize political murder. Someone tried to assassinate President Trump not that long ago. Conveniently, we don't talk about that anymore. Or who that guy was. Supposedly. Conveniently. If we normalize political murder, America becomes a nation of fear, not a nation of freedom. We are founded on the principle of being able to express yourselves. I don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. But we're founded on the principle of being able to express yourself. This matters because this can determine that violence decides who speaks. That's tyranny. That's fascism. To my leftist friends, my extreme leftist friends, that's fascism. Violence decides who speaks. Someone in the back of the room with a gun while you're about to give a speech on your political beliefs, you're going to change what you're going to say. You're going to fit the narrative, or you're going to get shot. That's tyranny. To conclude, I wanted this to go about 30 minutes, and I've accomplished my goal. You don't have to like Charlie Kirk. You don't have to like his ideas. But if you care about the United States of America, or if you care about freedom in general, this murder should horrify you. Yesterday it was Lincoln, King, and Kennedy. Today it's Kirk. Tomorrow it's who? Who's next? Who's next? Could be me. Who knows? So I pose a final challenge to you. Another question to ponder and to answer down in the comments. Do we stand for freedom of speech for all, or let fear and hate silence us? Freedom of speech for all, or fear and hate? Choose your side. Choose your side. Some of you did yesterday with your little hate videos, because that's what they were, coming from one side. Turn on the news yesterday, and the first thing I fucking hear on MSNBC was some guy, I don't even know who the hell it was, talking about, well, you know, Charlie Kirk should have kind of seen this coming with all of his hate that he spews. Literally word for word. You're the problem. Mainstream media, when shit like this happens, becomes the problem, not the solution. Because they all have to give their little 2 cents and stir up the fire, right? But isn't that their right too? Oh, think about that. Don't they have the right to speech too? Now, their speech should be different because they're intended to inform the public. Think about that. Comment on that. So do we stand for freedom of speech for all, or do we let fear or hate silence us? That's all from me. I'm Jeff, Veteran Perspectives. Please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share with everyone. I will see you guys next time. Thank you.